Okay, I think that's long enough, guys. Let's get cracking. It'll be myself, George Fox, and Logan Odie, both co-founders, will be running the AMA today. It's an internal AMA, just to go over some updates to keep you all in the loop with what we've been up to. So what we do, first of all, is just going to give a generic overview. There's been a lot of development in the background that you won't have seen on LinqProtocol, and Logan's just going to give a brief overview. If you can, Logan, summarize the last sort of like 3-4 weeks worth of the development work and potentially what it means for everyone.
Yeah, so we've been pushing forward on some internal goals for, I think something that's probably been much awaited is something we can touch and play and feel with, and that's what we're busy with right now. So a lot of this initial kind of half of this year was preparing very deeply into technical things for a kind of eventual release and moving it into a platform that people can actually touch and play with. And so that's what we're mainly working on right now, getting a lot of the back end stuff that we've been working on for a long time integrated with the front end, which a couple of weeks ago we did a series where we released a lot of the UI showing what it would look and feel like, and that's what we're kind of fast approaching. So a lot of our work right now has been around building smart contracts that can facilitate escrows, provider registration, job registration, things like that. And in addition to that, obviously, as I said, padding out the front end, making a lot of these things work so you can touch and feel them. So that's what we're busy with. Hopefully, I think we'll get into it more toward the middle half of the AMA, but there are some big updates coming for LinqProtocol that I think finally people will be able to actually interact with. And I think that's going to be a big lift from our side, and definitely a big milestone on the way to realizing the vision.
Is like I said, you've been describing this and explaining this to me and stuff. Are we going to make people wait for a video showing, or is there anything we can sort of allude to at this stage?
Well, I think I don't know how far you want to dig into that question, George, but in terms of if the question is around content, what we can expect to see from this, there will be a lot more content I think coming in the next couple of weeks that will start showing off the actual interface, us as a team kind of internally walking and clicking through it, playing with some of the functions versus some more kind of abstract marketing video. If that is what you were getting at, if not, just let me know what else you're asking.
No, that was it. I was specifically thinking about that sort of the requested dashboard and what that would be and what element of the product that will be, sort of moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as that goes, I'm going to jump into a little bit more of a broad update here then. So right now we are working on what we internally call the requester dashboard. I think that honestly that name needs revision and needs to be made a bit more clear for final release, but we refer to it as the requester dashboard. What this is the very first version of our entire kind of stack working together, where people can actually use it from an external perspective, with the one caveat being that we're running the provider nodes ourselves. So the provider nodes are not yet community based, they're not yet sourced from other locations except our and our partners' servers. So with the requester dashboard, as I said, kind of referring back to those videos we released a couple of weeks ago, that is what we're building. The vast majority of what you've seen in those videos will be accessible on the platform. And with this platform, you will actually be able to deploy applications to LinqProtocol and run them and interact with them and stuff like that. So as I did mention, though, a couple of caveats. As we've said before, this is a huge project. And so, we're moving the pieces that are bringing the most value quickest, but there are a lot more to do. And especially, there's a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that provider nodes are reliable. And when you use the platform, you'll have a good experience. Because there's so many different phases to this, we've decided on a rollout where we'll centralize the providers to our own servers initially, and then allow access to the community, and then also limit what exactly can be run at this stage, just to kind of give some time for us to find the kinks, see what changes when you add it into a production environment, and also allow a bit more time for development on the provider installer to be compatible with a bigger array of apps. And so with the requester dashboard, what you'd be getting is the ability to deploy a series of apps that we'll create or make available via templates. These things, I think more and more detail will come out about what exactly you can run on LinqProtocol in the short term. I'm sure keep an eye on Twitter. Those will be released as and when we're ready to release them. But that's what we're working toward with the requester dashboard. And all of our focus and energy is going into realizing this and making this something that everyone can touch and feel as soon as possible. And so that's kind of what we're working toward.
As far as this time-wise, we're not talking about a huge distance in the future, are we? This is moving forward at a decent rate at the moment.
7 years at least, I'd say. At least.
Okay. Okay. I know how much you hate timelines being a developer, so I won't push any further. But trust me when I say this, everyone, it's not close. A million miles away. It's quite close. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thanks for that update, Logan. I think that's probably, to keep it broad, is probably the best, because it is a highly complex thing. I think this will definitely be it will paint a much better picture when people can touch it and feel it. They'll understand the purpose of it a little bit better. I know I'm very much that way inclined with most things. So what I want to do now is delve a little bit into the videos we've been releasing, which are the tokenomic videos, what that means, and the slight little nuances that we've had to create for LinqProtocol, and a little bit about that. So the three main, the main token that will always exist as LNQ, and the two other variants, and I'll refer to them as that for the time being. So Logan, I want to touch on wrapped LNQ, so WLNQ, what it is, what does it mean for holders, what does it cost to change, will they have to interact with it if they don't use the protocol, and things like that. So if we can start off with just an overarching overview of wrapped LNQ and a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so again, I think LNQ can be thought of as the only token in this equation. For all intents and purposes, as far as we understand the word token, LNQ is the only one that holds value, it's the only one with a liquidity pool, it's the only one that's tradable, and so therefore, or I say tradable in terms of with the liquidity pool, on a chart. So LNQ on Ethereum mainnet, that is where the token has been, that's where it always will be. But Ethereum does have scaling limitations, right? This is commonly known. That's why L2s exist. And so in order to use LNQ in an L2, you need to create a variant of the token that's compatible with the L2. We did a ton of research, talked to a ton of projects, and we ended up settling with Arbitrum. You guys might have seen we had a little bit of engagement with them on Twitter a while back, and we're constantly pursuing strengthening that relationship. But we settled on Arbitrum because they're the most secure. So they inherit a lot of Ethereum security, and that allows us to get faster transactions with very minimal onboarding friction and high confidence security at the bridge level. So wrapped LNQ comes into the picture when you bridge LNQ over to Arbitrum. You can think of wrapped LNQ as just being literally that, a wrapper for the token. You have to send one LNQ onto Arbitrum, that LNQ gets locked, and you get minted one wrapped LNQ in Arbitrum that has no actual value except that it's interchangeable for LNQ. We won't be supporting a liquidity pool, nor will the wrapped token be supporting a liquidity pool on Arbitrum, and so there won't be concerns about the token growing its own kind of ecosystem. Again, it's just a wrapper for the LNQ token. Now, VLNQ is even a little bit more abstract than a wrapper. So VLNQ is much more
Logan,
like...
before we go into V, sorry
yes,
to interrupt. Before we go into that, so the wrapped LNQ. So if I am someone that is a speculative member, I understand LinqProtocol, I get what it does, but it's not something that I will use. Will I have to engage with the wrapped LNQ at any stage? Will it affect me in any way?
No, it won't affect you at any way.
So it'll only be required for users of the protocol. That's the only time that they will have to sort of go through this process. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Perfect. I just wanted to highlight that point to everyone.
Yep.
Yeah. Before we go into then VELNQ, which is our governance.
Yeah, so again, VELNQ is also not much like wrapped LNQ is not a requirement to ever interact with unless you want to use LinqProtocol. VLNQ is not a requirement to interact with unless you want to use governance. So we've done an explainer on the X profile. Also, there's a lot more information for those who want to get a bit more technical in the tokenomics light paper that's on the website. But VLNQ is much like a liquidity pool where you add two of an asset. So let's say a 5,000 LNQ and 1 ETH, and you get back from the liquidity contract, you'll get a LP token, which is then interchangeable again to get your two composite tokens back. So same thing with VELNQ. You would stake your actual LNQ in a staking pool, and for being a participant of that staking pool, you can get rewarded VLNQ, which is almost like your ticket to be able to vote with LNQ over governance decisions. So why need such a complex system? Why need the governance tokens in the first place? With LinqProtocol, there's a very active market. It's an active ecosystem. There's a lot of parameters that would change all the time to make it self-sustaining and to make it long-term viable. At some point, it becomes kind of almost irrelevant if the project controls these variables, and optimally this is outsourced to the community to kind of self-govern and self-moderate what they want kind of core platform variables to be. For instance, the take rate, the staking reward rate, things like this. These are things that you need to make kind of unified decisions on that affect the protocol in positive ways. And so that's where VLNQ comes into play. It gives every member that holds LNQ a kind of say in where the protocol is going by being able to adjust these fundamental parameters that make up the protocol itself. And so it serves a role there, but also this kind of governance structure serves a role in dispute resolution. So just to clarify again what I mean there, in these kind of compute transactions, because you have one person who's providing compute for X amount of time, and you have another person delivering a very complicated piece of software to run on this computer, there is a horde of things that could in this process go awry, and it's not the fault of the protocol, and it might not be the fault of either individual. And because of that, because of these complex systems, in order to not centralize that, so in other words, we just make the decision on who wins or who loses a dispute like that, this is also outsourced to the community to be able to look at the evidence of cases on LinqProtocol, earn rewards for participating in this dispute resolution, and then ultimately benefit the protocol by resolving disputes in a community-based manner. That's kind of a high-level overview of every layer of the token and where it's going to be serving a purpose in the ecosystem. So George, honestly, any questions that you have from that you think I didn't call out there?
Yeah, the one thing I think you've mentioned, you spoke about obviously VELNQ, as it's pronounced, it is like a liquidity pool token. I think it's important to note that the elements it's like a liquidity pool token is you put something in, with an LP token, you put two things in and get one out. That's the principle. Again, VELNQ has no monetary value, and it's a voting mechanism. I just wanted to make sure that was a good across, and that when you enter the words liquidity pool, people didn't think I can trade that or I'll sell that to buy that. And no, it is a much like the wrapped element is like the working layer, and the other is the voting layer. We will be sending out another video next week, guys, with all of those 4 videos tied together neatly to go through the whole quad staking mechanism again, and hopefully that will answer any other sort of existing questions that remain around the new style of tokenomics. And if you are a sucker for punishment, read the Tokenomics light paper. Some easy bedtime
also,
reading.
I just want to throw out there, George, if anyone has any questions after delving into these things, please feel free to drop them in the Telegram group, where if they're very high level or technical questions, we're more than happy to engage with them and answer them for you guys. Also, just want to point out there that a lot of these mechanisms that exist all feed back to a staking pool, right? And so we've constructed a lot of the tokenomics of the protocol to benefit holders, right? So we had farms for a while, and we're aware of the kind of longing for a print mechanism like that again, and it's also something that's very beneficial in ecosystems like this. It is a strategic move by a lot of projects to allow staking to encourage people to participate, and so we're working toward that again with LinqProtocol, and all these kind of bells and whistles we've set up are all to ultimately all benefit stakers. That's why we kind of call it our quad income staking pool, and we put emphasis on income there. It's not so much a distribution platform for just spreading around token supply or combating deflation, or it's there as an income generating mechanism for being a part of the ecosystem. Your tokens that you stake on LinqProtocol are actually used in the ecosystem. They form part of the ecosystem. They're required for normal function. And as a result of some of the risk you take on being part of the ecosystem and holding those tokens and locking those tokens, the ecosystem itself, as transactions move through it, as disputes are resolved, as governance decisions are proposed and resolved, the staking pool generates or takes a small portion of that income all along the way. And that's why we call it quad income staking pool, because it is actually earning income for work done by the tokens that you hold and you stake there. So I just thought I'd clarify that as well.
No, perfect, mate, perfect. I hope that's clear. And like I said, guys, anything, always just ask questions. Telegram, Discord, we're more than happy to answer. So moving on, so we have the protocol. We have the first sort of, let's call it the first layer or the first stage of it in existence, and as it starts to develop through time, chronologically, we add more parts to it, and it becomes more capable. Well, when it's complete, then it serves as a purpose. So obviously, we've been looking at some different templates, but maybe Logan, you could sort of, in a much sort of more intellectual way than I could, explain what people will be able to do with it, and give some sort of real world, situations. Like for people like myself and some of the community members, I can see John's in the crowd as well. Like, is this, if that's something that they want to do, if they want to not only free up some GPU compute power, but what about if they want to look to use it? What would a typical user look like? And maybe give some insight into that.
Yeah, so again, the initial rollout that's coming soon will be a bit more limited in terms of what apps can run on it. They will be curated at this point by us internally. But the limits of what can run on LinqProtocol are virtually endless. So for me personally, I pay an Excali draw subscription. It's a great little drawing tool that I use a bunch, and I cannot wait to outsource this to our upcoming platform, where it will actually cost me less per month to host it myself in LinqProtocol than it will cost to pay the monthly subscription of running that app. So again, it's definitely a huge target market for us are people that do need hosting services. So your average kind of degen, as one would call it, might not find it interesting to host their own apps, but I do think this landscape is changing drastically. So developers, I think anyone in the crowd who's a developer, like, hosting things, you need them and they cost a lot of money, and you're always looking for better versions, and we're bringing a decentralized version of this to the market, and I think that makes a lot of sense for them. I think what makes maybe less immediate sense is for consumers. So if you're just someone who doesn't really write much code, you don't deploy applications, you've never heard of a server before, why would you want to use LinqProtocol? I think there's a growing movement across the globe to start self-hosting. And a lot of people, especially if you've never heard this term before, very abstract, very unclear what that means. But what it does mean is there are so many good open source solutions to a lot of common subscriptions that people pay that it might make, in many cases, sense to stop paying the subscriptions and just host a server and run your own version of a lot of those things. And I think as this narrative grows across the internet, more people start, so to speak, de-Googling and self-hosting, we'll see a lot of influx of people who are interested in doing that, interested in paying a kind of fixed price for a server that can do any number of things, from hosting storage solutions to hosting email applications to hosting Excalidraw to hosting websites, and make that a kind of pay for the server service where you get to install a whole bunch of open source templates for free. I think that's a very attractive offer that will grow as time goes on. But again, the first version of this that a lot of people will make contact with, definitely, as a developer tool, as a tool that serves compute, which is mostly used by developers and alike, that's definitely where you can expect the most interest. But I think this kind of setup has a lot of future potential for average consumers to just use this and save a lot of money on subscriptions that are unnecessary.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think this is going to be something that people, that in the next sort of 2-3 years, is going to start to become more apparent. Did you see Elon Musk's recent tweet about creating a phone that has no apps on it, and that generative AI, you basically tell them what you want to achieve and it will build, I probably got this wrong, build some form of an app or some form of a process for that. It will develop in front of you for that specific process in mind. I guess the amount of GPU power and stuff, things like that will be required to do that will be quite intensive, I'm guessing, from a generative AI perspective. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with I didn't see the exact tweet, but I'm familiar with the concept of kind of just-in-time development. I do think, like, the overarching point there, though, is like compute. People are going to need more compute. The more you do things like, okay, we take away the operating system, we take away compilation, we just have like a just-in-time compiler for anything that your heart could desire, and it just builds it for you on the spot. As you move more toward that level of convenience, you also move up and up the kind of compute demand curve, where you just need more and more compute. And these are cool, like, futures that we might actually find ourselves living in, where any app that you could reasonably want for keeping a to-do list or helping you with your bookkeeping is generatable on the spot. And compute is the limiting factor there. And so that's another reason why we go so hard on LinqProtocol, is because we believe that the future of value in AI is largely also in who owns the compute or the access to compute funnel. And so that's definitely where we want to position ourselves and make sure we can play a role in providing compute like that for people.
I found it. So xAI's long-term plan is to be an edge node running AI inference to generate pixels and audio. No more traditional OS or apps, but just AI rendering everything directly. And then Musk has tweeted it as an easy prediction of things ahead. But exactly what you said, I mean, that is going to be incredibly GPU intensive, and the fact that like you've alluded to, there is absolutely tons of GPU power out there that's just not utilized. If I turn around, there's a 5090 graphics card sat in a PC behind me, and it is turned off, and it has been for the last 3 or 4 days. So the point there is that actually this sort of a platform will allow people to utilize that for a cheaper amount.
Just to make the point there, I think something that we might have touched on this in the previous AMA, but when GPT released their couple of open source models, I think that was the first time in the world where if you had a 5090, it was like really actually valuable for something that a lot of people want. Before that, what could you do with your graphics card? You could, obviously there's retail use, right? Like playing games, or maybe you do CAD design or 3D rendering. Those made sense, right? That's why you'd buy it. But in terms of if you were to resell the value of running something on that graphics card to someone else, I think, very few things. Maybe you can run some crypto miners although profitability is very sketchy, it's probably going to work out more in power consumption on those cards. They're not purpose-built for that. You have 3D rendering, but again, a demand there, might not be big enough that people want to use yours over. And again, with the 5090, it's only so much compute power. So normally people want clusters. With these open source models releasing, it's the first time where your 5090 can run like an instance of an agent that someone could be using, and they could be paying you for running something like that. And it's unique also because as soon as you get down to like 4060 or 5070, these are no longer cards that can run these things that well. So you now have carved out this kind of like value in the economy for your 5090, which is like, my thing can run a sufficiently useful AI model. And I think that's also a very interesting use case of LinqProtocol, is being able to run these kind of individual agents on graphics cards for people and then resell that as a way to make your graphics card valuable to someone else. I think that's quite a unique part of this moment in time that we live in right now, where before now that just hasn't been possible.
And these models will only, they're obviously the open source, they've set a precedent there with, they're happy to do this. Some of the bigger companies, which we haven't seen to date so much, apart from the Llama models, which were significantly smaller and less capable. So I'm guessing they're only going to get more efficient over time, and therefore be able to be condensed down into more manageable packages for retail users, right?
Yes, and I think people might argue, okay, well, why are you so focused on small models? Surely the big models is where it's at. And although I think in a subscription such as ChatGPT, maybe most users prefer having access to the best model, they're willing to pay for it. But there are points where models are sufficiently capable of doing things. So for instance, web browsing. At some point along the model intelligence curve, it doesn't make sense to use the Einstein level model to do web browsing. It would make sense to offload that task to a smaller but capable enough model that runs at substantially less cost. And that's these types of kind of parallelizable use cases where I see these small AI models really making sense to invest in from an outside perspective. And again, I see those models, much like you just said, getting more and more efficient over time, being able to run more capable, more useful, smaller models on consumer GPUs and consumer cards. Definitely an interesting parallel there to what we're building. Yeah, I think that's well covered.
I can tell everyone that the phone call I received from Logan when the 20 billion parameter model came out for OpenAI just before they released GPT-5 was way more excitable than when GPT-5 came out, because like you said, it's more of a generous model and it doesn't open it up from a development standpoint anywhere near as much as those open source models is. But yes, I remember your excitement with that call. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of more models being released, to sort of attempt to compete and to see where that goes, especially from a decentralized compute perspective. Look, Logan, there is one thing I want to talk about, which we haven't mentioned for a little while. We did briefly announce, I think, a while back, and that's the Stripe integration. And maybe explain to people maybe what's been developed. This is going to be putting you on the spot, so you're going to have to wiggle if you don't want to answer this. What's been developed, and how that running on something like LinqProtocol would benefit the people who are running it, maybe in a couple of ways.
So yeah, I mean, again, to understand how cool the kind of Stripe integration is, you need to understand the problem, which is if you're building a SaaS tool, which we've built a lot of and plan to build a lot more of, but if you're building a SaaS tool, the end of or somewhere in the beginning, once you've done user management, now you need to do billing management and subscription management and renewal management. All of these are complex functions that maybe sound a bit easier to do than they actually are, and then you do them the first time, your implementation's a bit skew. And so anyway, we got so sick and tired of writing Stripe integrations that we just built a library that manages it for us, so you can do kind of any type of SaaS billing management from this library. It's bring your own Stripe, so we don't really control it. You can just plug your own Stripe in there. And we had this tool, and we've been sitting on it for a while. We find, or we think, the best use case for a tool like this is to be open sourced as a way to attract developer support to LinqProtocol, to start building up a kind of a following of developers who want to engage with the code that we're writing, especially as we start open sourcing parts of LinqProtocol, to again attract developer and community support to expanding the platform. So that's what the Stripe integration is. It's kind of a don't worry about billing or user management for your SaaS app, and we're planning on open sourcing it. It's a very useful library. I'm sure if there's any devs in the room that have done Stripe integration before, they'll want something like this. So that's something that we're planning on releasing. I wouldn't say when it's going to get released, though. As I said, the release schedule of that will be in effort to attract more developers to following LinqProtocol. So probably closer to the time when there's things tangible for LinqProtocol that people can start engaging with. We don't want to kind of waste the opportunity to onboard more developers to our ecosystem. So yeah, but that's a cool like tool that we built internally. Probably even past this AMA, no one's going to hear much about it. But I love the tool. I think it runs synthetic right now, so it's in production and it works like a bomb. So yeah.
It must be a good bomb, not like one of those bad bombs. That's
yes.
an Africanism right
Funny
there,
saying,
Logan.
right? Works like a bomb.
That works like a bomb. It's like a charm is what you were looking for. No, that's all good. I'm gonna push you on something that we haven't discussed before, and it's something that we've had a discussion before that you've had to explain to me on several occasions, and that is why open source something. Because I guarantee you there'll be people in the audience that are thinking, I just don't get it. I don't want to ask why, because it's probably obvious, and it's not obvious. It's definitely a roundabout way to do things, but worth explaining, because we did have a conversation with the guys at Arbitrum, and that's something that they are very keen on, and they do understand that being developer centric, and they really like that sort of methodology and that mindset that you came out with. But it's obviously not a new thing, open sourcing stuff. But maybe if you could just explain, maybe even using the Stripe or even elements of LinqProtocol, why that is a good thing, what it brings to us, what it benefits the project, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like open source, counterintuitive, because you have something that you could have been charging for, and yet you're offering a almost free version. Although I would say, why people pay for things is not always so clear. In the case of something like Excalidraw, which I mentioned before, I still pay for Excalidraw. I have a monthly subscription. Even though I have all the expertise and skills and know-how to host Excalidraw myself, I pay for it because it's convenient and it's on the cloud. Until I have a one-click installer with LinqProtocol, it will still stay the most convenient way for me to access Excalidraw. So, first, just disconnect the fact that people always pay for the tool itself. That's not always true. Sometimes people pay for the experience interacting with the tool, which can be, you can build a moat around that in and of itself. But the bigger reason for open source is normally to attract more support. So a lot of things, especially when it comes to like blockchain style projects, they're huge and they suffer from problems that marketplaces suffer from. So like if no one's using it, no one's building things for it, no one's using it. If no one's using it, no one's building things for it. And so that's a really hard problem to get yourself out of. And so a common perspective is to open source what you're working on and make it available for other people to contribute to and to use, and by doing that to gain adoption quicker. So when considering whether or not your business model fits the open source model, I think it's important to consider, like, do you benefit more from paying people to use your software, or do you benefit more from more people using your software? And so with LinqProtocol, it runs on the blockchain. A lot of LinqProtocol is already open source by nature of it being on chain, but then there are some proprietary things that we could have chosen to keep closed source, like our provider installer, our provider application itself, the actual clusters, the central cluster that we run. These are things where we could have made them paid for services, but ultimately I think in a blockchain level protocol like LinqProtocol and whatever might come next, the amount of people interested in using it is so much more important than the amount of money you're making from those people individually, because you make money and you make revenue and income as your protocol scales. And so what we're focusing on is how quickly can we scale LinqProtocol. And the easiest, quickest way for us to scale, especially as kind of one of the smaller projects in this space, is to allow developers to hack it apart, make it their own, contribute, call out faults, help us debug. And we think that kind of, although it might seem counterintuitive, for LinqProtocol to succeed, it makes much more sense to try and grow as quickly as we can. And the way to achieve that kind of scale and that kind of support from the community is through open source. And there's a lot of successful cases of this running like that before.
Oh my God, this is very weird, because I've written down here questions that I was going to ask that I imagine that will come up. And the first one was, how do you benefit as a project if you're not generating revenue from direct sales? How do you create? And I know this. Sorry, I'm posing this, but I didn't a while back, and I did ask this question of you. So is it? You did touch on it there, but is there a specific example you could give in our case for people?
I can't. I mean, like there are examples. For instance, like ETH would have open sourced most code that they ever wrote, right? Yeah. And it didn't hinder the platform development. In fact, it's made ETH the default chain for smart contracts to run on. There are much better, more refined examples I could think of if I had some time. But look, the result is obvious, right? Is if you benefit more from scale than you do from sales, then then open sourcing is a completely viable business strategy for you. And that would be in our case, right? Because again, the more people we get to run compute jobs on LinqProtocol, the more revenue the protocol makes, the more money the stakers make, the happier everyone is. Whereas if we kept things proprietary and we didn't allow, so rather the question is, well, if it's true that if more people use it, more people run jobs on your protocol, then how do you get that to happen? So then you might say, well, charging people for it is almost definitely counterintuitive because people will use it less. And that's how you get into kind of open sourcing.
That's the answer you gave me the first time. That's where I was trying to get you towards that exact answer.
Yeah, and I mean, again, something that I think is prevalent in this case is there is no kind of GPU renting service that has, as far as I'm aware, an open source provider. So in other words, the thing that installs in your PC and does all the fancy magic to actually make your PC a server and being able to run like fancy jobs and GPU models and stuff like that. So the fact that there isn't an open source one means for developers who are interested in using it, they just kind of have to play by your rules. And for a lot of the developer community, that's a horrible proposition. They love when something's open and you can just hack and slash it to make it what you want. And you know what, if they're going to try and do that with anyone's provider, I'd rather that be ours. That benefits us, that benefits our ecosystem. And so I think it is a harder concept to understand, especially if you're not in the software world. I think to engineering companies, this would sound like a completely preposterous idea. Just give away the metal. It doesn't matter. But obviously that's not what we're doing in this case. But point is, it is hard to wrap your head around why that makes sense. But I think for LinqProtocol is the only real strategy for us to achieve a successful outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's probably also worth noting that, especially in the Web3 world, adoption is driven by noise as well, right? We all know how the noisier you are in the space, the more eyeballs you get on you. Normally, people do hugely benefit from that. So I think that type of a concept is something that we want to adhere to as well. So sort of reading between the lines, the more developers that get involved, like you said, hack and slash, that the more efficient and the faster the protocol can grow for a cheaper overhead as well.
Yep, correct. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mission we're very passionate about, and we expect a lot of people in the world are quite passionate about this. And if you don't want to start from the very beginning, you can start from where we are and assist us, or get involved and contribute and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's well covered, honestly.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, for the thing that I can think of in my head is the Open Zeppelin stuff, right? For sort of Web3 smart contracts and stuff, is probably a good example of open source. If it's not, just lie, just this AMA and say that it is, Logan.
Okay, it is, yeah.
Okay, good. Is it not? No? That's not an example of libraries and stuff.
No, I'm not lying. It is. Well, okay. So like again, in Open Zeppelin, it would be slightly different, right? Where I think they make revenue as a project. Again, not from their kind of open contract standard and their quick builders. Those are all free tools that they give away. But I'm pretty sure they have an auditing arm, as far as I'm aware, and they have other kind of tack-on services where if you want to work with the guys who made the best standard for smart contracts, then you're going to want to work with them and so on and so forth. So, theirs is a bit less direct, where that growth from open sourcing these contract standards and making it easy for people to build secure ERC20 contracts or ERC whatever contract, that indirectly benefits them from more people have their eyes on them, more people want to work with them for external things, and that's how they grow through open source. A little bit different than our story, but I guess the fundamentals stay the same.
Would you give me 75% for that answer?
69.
Okay, it's better than I got at school anyway, so I'll take that. Okay, so we've covered updates on what we're building, the tokenomics around what that is for the user, what that means to them, what they'll be able to do with their tokens, and the functionality that they can achieve on the protocol and with the project. And we've covered obviously a little bit about the sort of the templates and what that allow people to do with the protocol, some generic stuff. We've also mentioned the open source nature of sort of how we're building and the reasons for that, and it's the rapid adoption, the lower overheads, attracting talent and things like that. And the last thing I really want to cover is obviously the sales strategy. So the protocol has been built, it exists. We've spoken about chicken and egg problem. We obviously have our own apps and tools to put on there, but we will also go looking. And that's when, obviously we've had this discussion before. So on several occasions, is it picking that moment of when you actually put a lot of money into sort of sales and trying to convert, Web3 and Web2 users to the protocol, from a long-term perspective. So, I mean, do you want to still touch on that a little bit more eloquently than I can?
So yeah, I mean, like we probably use this analogy, right, to Paul, where their bot was just everywhere at the peak of Paul doing their marketing, and I think that type of approach is like the ideal success case for us. We want to get like most of our partner projects to run at least some of their services on LinqProtocol. We want to find Web2 companies and convince them through either price cuts or incentives to bring their compute jobs off of their existing provider and onto LinqProtocol. At the same time, we want to talk to servers. And honestly, if there's anyone that you as a listener right now know or want to put us in touch with that owns a server farm or has too much compute power than what they know what to do with, then put them in touch with us, because that's another kind of arm of our strategy, is reaching out to people with an excess of compute and showing them that we can make it run. Because again, you must understand that from the perspective of a guy with a server farm, he might not always, this hardware depreciates relatively fast, especially considering how expensive it is to build. So you constantly want to have demand on all of your hardware, and when you don't have demand, when you have dead time, that is loss of money. And so what we take to the server providers and try and offer them is, this is the expected amount of jobs that we're going to have in, this is how they're going to run, this is the expected downtime, and we're going to try and get them to work with us. Because conversely, us being able to provide a better deal to people who have existing compute providers that they work with would be a primary incentive for them moving their compute jobs over to LinqProtocol. So yeah, this will be an extensive part of our strategy. I think as soon as the protocol has GPU enabled and GPU upgrades are live, attracting a bunch more partners to work with us and directly run their dApps or their services on LinqProtocol, that would be a huge part of our strategy.
And before I touch on someone who's already come to me with a couple of server farms, people he knows, it's worth noting that this will start off with small to medium-sized customers, building up reputation, building up time scores, building out statistics data to show people that they're reliable, and then going for sort of larger fish, so to speak, in the process. So we're very excited about making that move, but first of all, sort of we will build, and then we will conquer. So that is the plan, the overall sort of the really macro high scale sort of BD plan.
Sorry to interject, but on that note, I this is something we might have missed earlier, but I just want to talk about roadmap a little bit, right? Which is, we have a roadmap on the site. Actually, we have two roadmaps. One covered in the initial light paper we did for LinqProtocol, and then kind of a little bit less verbose version on the website. Both of those roadmaps, although I think still what we're sticking to, I think that we have a lot more clarity we can provide is the gist of it. And so I think, although I wouldn't know if roadmap revision is the right term, maybe it's just roadmap update, where some small wording changes or the way we describe how we're going to kind of get to mainnet changes. But I do think that's something people can expect in the future. I think there's some quality of life improvements I think that can be made to the wording to help people understand where it's going, how we're going to get there, kind of what phases we're going to do them in, and what phase are you in right now, are questions that I think should be more explicitly answered that aren't right now.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to do it, right? You set off with a vaguish roadmap, and then you work your way along, and as everyone knows, no plan survives first contact, and then you're as transparent as you can be, saying, oh, we were a little bit quicker here, we're a little bit slower here, we've changed these around because we've realized that this order suits us better, or this works better with this. So yeah, no, it will be a roadmap change. It will 100% be a roadmap update with more detail as you've stepped on the and you probably tick off a few of those items as well, right, from the initial
tons
from the initial roadmap. Yeah, so that will be coming soon, but obviously that will probably come after that initial first set of sprints, right, before what we've called the requested dashboard is live, so to speak. And then we'll probably look at doing that. We do have a question, Logan. I have a question from Crypto Prof.
Nice.
Security questions, to get your security hat on. And the question is, how is security ensured for LinqProtocol? Is there an audit? Now look, that may not, I mean, I know there's the smart contract elements to it, and that we're auditing those. But I'm guessing you maybe want to answer the question as a broad scope for security for LinqProtocol, as opposed to just specifically the smart contracts, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what, I mean, it's a broad question, right? Like, is security? Yeah. Yes, is security. There is security. We have had security. We've always been very focused on security. We even had like minor updates to our farms contract, re-audited at full price to ensure that, like, everything stays secure. That being said, for being able to dissuade some of these security concerns, in the first version of LinqProtocol, or the first version of the requester dashboard, there will be a wallet generated for you, right? And so we're trying to reduce friction. We know people hate signing shit on chain, and so this very first version will generate a wallet for you just to dissuade concerns, because the audits aren't planned until at least kind of testnet a cycle that needs to complete first, with a whole bunch of contracts, a lot of which are still in progress. So yes, security. There's a lot of security. It's a big focus of ours. It's a big challenge in this protocol, even at deeper levels, right? Like securing env files as they have to transmit between like your PC, some centralized party, potentially no centralized party, potentially straight to your provider. How to ensure the provider doesn't mess with things. If the provider messes with something on his stack, like, do we at least know? Can we give security guarantees? Which types of providers can give you cryptographic securities? Running in like secure enclaves. All of these things are possible. All of these are things we consider. So yes, there's security. A lot of this, though, finalizing things like contract audits, again, further down the line. But the way we're releasing this, the kind of phase rollout we'll have, would mean that we won't jeopardize your wallet until like we're sure and it's been through audits. And that's kind of our perspective on the first one, why we're generating wallets internally, where the kind of cost of attack is really, really small in that cohort, and every contract itself is robust. But again, the wallets are generated, and then that contract code will again be audited by third parties as we progress and as we get to testnet and stuff like that. So yes, there's security. It's a huge focus of ours.
To be fair, and I wish CryptoProf had come up and asked the question, but my interpretation is probably around the fact that there will be a bridge mechanism involved with the wrap LNQ, and people's experience of bridges is hacking, draining, Web3 contracts, spoof signing, all the things that you've kind of touched on, mate. But I think you've answered that, or you've preempted that sort of question pretty well with the fact that we will create your own wallet as well. So that'll be another thing. And in fact, I think you just released a little bit of alpha, because I think next week at some stage there'll be a video going out, maybe showing you exactly how we're moving forward with that type of things. But yeah, I couldn't possibly say at this stage. So yeah, that's a great question. Security it's something that people forget about a lot of the time, but it's not something that we forget about. I've personally been somewhere where there's been an exploit, and it's very, very embarrassing and very, very stressful and very alarming to a lot of people, especially because huge amounts of money is involved. So we take it incredibly seriously all the time. I have no more questions, Logan. I've got no more sort of talking points that we've got. Thank you everyone for attending and listening. Hopefully it was of some use to you guys. Hopefully it's made something, or it's answered a specific question you had, made everything slightly clearer. We will continue to keep doing them, and we will continue striving to simplify the message for the tokenomics, simplify the message for the light paper, for LinqProtocol, and hopefully you will see as this develops how much of a monumental project this is that we've taken on, and how impressive it will be. Logan, thank you very much for providing the brain power required for these AMAs to have any credibility. I will let you sign off, and then we'll call it a night.
Well, thanks, George, and thanks for entertaining another one of these, and thanks everyone for joining and listening in. And yeah, have a good week ahead, and we'll catch you in the next one.